In a world where existing outside of a civilization that oppresses their own people can get you targeted by those who prey on others.
This court is now in session. Let's begin our introductions. Okay? So, after that, let's begin our arguments.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, we are here today because the defendant is a criminal. Look at him. He could have a weapon on him for all we know right now, and he would love the satisfaction of taking home a pretty little white woman like me to be his personal sex slave. He is a fucking savage who thinks, if at all, differently than us, and won't have the best of intentions for any of us if we can't press charges against him. This prairie nigger has a weapon on him, and I'm sure it's to try to look cool and act like he can have one as the simple savage he is. But for what? I can tell you why, and that's to shoot up daycares and stuff like in movies and on TV. This dumb prairie nigger don't know what's best for him and needs to be taught a better way, if not put down, because right now he don't got nothing. I want the full force of the law involved with this man and make sure this prairie nigger don't get away. Niggers be like that, just begging for an ass whipping, but I'm not one to do anything but what I know to do, and that is getting this savage off of the streets and put in programs to tame him if it can be done at all. I need a paycheck for the involvement, and I believe in the enforcement of the state and the state intervening in our personal lives, because who doesn't know what it's like to waste your life dealing with legal charges? I know I can't say I haven't sat in or even seen a courtroom before, so neither should he. What makes him so special? Plus, I do this to niggers of any kind all the time, and I don't mind saying it for the record at this time, but that's talking bigger than what niggers know, and that's for a reason. So, Your Honor, do us all a favor. Let us have at this prairie nigger and stay out of the way. He thinks he is even civilized enough to have a child with him without our services and our resources, and vows to the state. He will bleed like they all do when any nigger wants to talk big like us white folk. He ain't nothing but a dog, looking for us white girls to prey on, thinking he can talk big and wear a gun like a white can.
So, what you're saying is that they have politically different ideas, and you literally openly called them a prairie nigger, as you said, to be the crime being committed. And you'd also like to consider their ability to own a firearm questionable and necessary, given the issues that are being raised by you and your client. Am I correct? I'm just unsure by what you are trying to say, because they do have rights to own and possess a firearm, and they have freedom of speech. So I'm not understanding what you are trying to say. But if you need to take some time to readdress the issue, to say it in a way that can be an actual charge I can actually issue any paperwork on, it just doesn't make sense to raise this as an issue. Again, if you can say it another way, I may be able to get what it is you are looking for. So if you have nothing further to say, I'd like to hear from the defense now. Can you state your name for the record? What are you aware of at this moment about the charges being raised against you?
Danny was frustrated with what was allowed to be said against not only them but as a reason to put anyone in jail for. Danny reminded them that everything was being recorded in the courtroom, and that they wouldn't get away with saying these things, and that it was stupid to say these things openly, like this, because it can be used against who says it. And these racist comments being taken at this level of recognition legally was affront to justice, and pleaded for the judge to hear them out, all because someone they had trusted to be their partner betrayed their trust to try to save their own skin by making up accusations of abuse against them and against a Native American. But their voice was silenced. Danny knew there was only one way out of that situation, and that was to wait it out and let them play their cards the way it was being sought out for, to prove that they were doing these things and get them at their weakest with everything later. They tried to put Danny in jail over hearsay and lost in their attempts to create a precedent to follow, but they had created enough of a gap of information for everything that could follow. Danny never would let their guard down from them, and for good reason. They had lost one child to similar practices by a county that later refined its law after it had done the damage it could, and that was only because they chose fights with people who had the money to fight them off. Danny knew something had to be done.
Okay. Well, as far as I'm being told, you don't like how the government is right now. Am I correct? No, it is not a crime to have different opinions, and it isn't illegal to possess a firearm in the state of Colorado, which is why I'm not going to press these charges any further than it already is. But I will say this. This was money and a paycheck to be here, which is what you are saying to be a fact. And if this money didn't have a purpose, all of us can face serious consequences for taking money from the Big Daddy government, because that's illegal. Also, it has come to my attention that you are recording this right now and uploading it to a social media platform, and we will have to ask you to stop or be criminally prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Thank you for doing that. We have respect for these processes, and for a lot of us, it's literally all we know. So we aren't joking about any of this at all. In fact, we take pride in what we do with what we know, and to disrespect the sanctity of my courtroom is something I won't allow. So let me return to the other side of the argument and see what still needs to be seen or presented. Okay? So now we will be addressing a new raised issue, and that has been raised, and that is the posts on this social media platform as well. The prosecution says that these posts are saying this is all violent and a criminal act, to say these people are out to get me, from the defendant on their social media page, which is what the prosecutor is saying, is a direct threat against them, and the department, including the janitors, and a specific group of people within the department, indicating some kind of violent act of killing that is an act of beheading and mutilation, that can be linked to also being a racist against America, viciously xenophobic, against the district attorney prosecuting and the parties involved, and proceeded to call the defendant dumb and wouldn't know what an organized structure being a prairie nigger. It sounds really tasteless, but coming from someone who is black, which would be our district attorney prosecuting the defendant against a Native American, it must mean it's true, because we know how black people are here, and we like them.
It looks like we are coming to the conclusion that this is going into a trial, being the prosecutor is wanting to these charges, and the defendant disagrees. So let's start this. For the side of the prosecution, what is your opening argument? So what you're saying is that you believe that because the defendant doesn't have a mansion with a 3-car garage and a pool in the back, with a manservant named Juan, who can wipe your own ass for you, and doesn't work for the biggest oil company in the state, and openly advocating solutions for the state to not care about the atrocities of the past, and create new ideas that can legitimize the city as the solution for what would still need to be addressed, that he is guilty of child abuse and neglect with no injury. Okay, that's what I thought, and what was that? Culture is irrelevant for child welfare. Okay. Very shallow and weird to say when we record everything that happens in here, but okay. I guess I'd like to ask you what you mean by that, but it's embarrassing. I'm still allowing you to present these arguments at this point to say anything about it. So let's continue to... What was that? He didn't want you to have access to his mental health treatment and give you access to his medical history. That's really concerning in a way you want to say this, but again, I have to hear you out, and luckily there is the video and audio files we can look at later because, I mean, really. Well, okay, is there anything else the prosecution would like to add before I turn to the defense? What is your opening argument that we haven't somewhat addressed earlier? Yup, I am aware, and oh, what's that you have information about a party involved? So what you're saying is that you were scared for your child because they were around someone who was selling sex around them, and this recording and these text messages from them is saying they admit to it. I see. Oh, so you didn't know who was around your child, and when you confronted the party involved, and they turned everything against you and said you were the abuser when in fact they admitted to that to you. I see. So, okay, well, thank you for giving me the evidence of that. And you said there was someone who was smuggling unmarked weapons, who was involved with the party trying to place these charges against you. Oh, yeah, I see that. And you say he was around the party, involved the same time she admitted to being a prostitute around a minor, which would be your child? I see. Well, this is very shocking to say the least. I was hoping things could be resolved in one sitting, but we will have to come back. Okay, we are back. So I'd like to hear from the defense, being we last left off with what they had to say, which I believe involved criminal activity openly admitted to in texts and everything. And before we do, I'd like to ask this person if it is true on oath. Do you admit to this information being given to me about you? It has this number and says, it's from you. Okay, so you are admitting to it, but only with one condition. And that is that it wasn't around the child, but it is still a crime in the state of Colorado. So we will address this in a different way, but let's continue with the defense. So you're saying that when Child Protective Services got involved, they treated you weirdly. How so? Oh, okay, so you say they came and ripped your baby away from you under the threat of arrest. And then you stayed over a year with, I remember the hearings involving them and their accusations against you. I see. Well, nothing to fear. Everything in here is being recorded by a stenographer and by audio and video. So everything said in here can be used against anyone who wants to break the law in my courtroom. Okay, so I'm going to have to think about this. Oh? What was that you said? Prairie niggers don't need to be around children without state intervention with their personal lives? Interesting and noted. So we are going back to make our decision, and we will return afterwards. We find the defendant guilty of child abuse and neglect, and we changed the law so no audio or video files can be released about what was said in the courtroom through any juvenile court legal process, because we believe our courts are always just. No one will make the law look foolish while we are around, and we know everyone who wants to be involved with the law has to be a truthful and honest person. Otherwise, how did they get their law degree? See, that's what we know around here, the formality we are comfortable with, and the defendant does make us feel uncomfortable just by the way they look, and how what they say goes against all we know. This case is closed, and if you want, you can appeal it in a higher court. But with the courtroom's findings, with no identifiable duress being recognized, find this to be in the best of interests for the county and the state.
It wasn't the first time Danny was left to be forgotten. Over the years, Danny developed a pure hatred for the America that was being portrayed. Danny knew what they heard was nonsense and questioned every bit of history there was. Being at one point in time in American history, it's as though the Americans stopped being murdering pedophiles against indigenous nations of this land and started fighting bigger battles. As if they walked away from the guilt and the shame of the past and made a new narrative to hide behind. As an outsider to American interests, being of an indigenous nation of these lands that are now known as America, it was easy to see how things actually were, being their perspective wasn't dependent on being within the confines of American control. But the world changed to almost combat any perspective that wasn't in favor for American supremacy. After years of being seen as a monster, even from an early age, just for having different opinions then, the rooms of people Danny would find themselves in, they knew one day, if nothing were to be addressed in these ways, that it may fall onto them to say or do something about it. And now today would be the day these American oppressors will have to learn their lesson.
I just heard it.
What about it?
I was just wondering, is that any of your business?
What about it?
Is that any of your business? Be stating outside like that?
Why are you in my conversation?
You stated it outside.
Don't worry
sir.
about my conversation.
Well,
Well, don't worry about my conversation.
mind your own fucking business.
Who's gonna make me?
As long as I control the myth, the past remains locked away. No one feels your lights are way back, no one back, driven mainly